And we are live. So, welcome to episode 260. That's 2, that's 6, that's 0 of An American Werewolf. I am the American Werewolf. In the house tonight, we've got Bill Halberstrand at I need to return some videotapes.com.
Yeah, exactly.
That's he's changed his website from ihatewesterns.com to I need to return some videotapes.com, but it's a free country, so he can do that. And we've got John K. Alvarez back from returning some videotapes.
That's because returning videotapes.com wouldn't take my order. So I had to physically go and find a Blockbuster in Indiana.
I'll sell you the URL for $1,000.
It's funny because we just hired some kid, as we were talking about in the group chat earlier today. He's like 26 and he's got some background in advertising and marketing and this sort of shit. And I was telling him over lunch what it was like to have to go to the video store. But somehow that came up. And never knowing what you're going to get, wanting the popular movie, even if they had 15 or 20 copies of it, there was no guarantee that you were going to get it. But that was the bad news. The good news is we did not need to return videotapes for the same reason that Patrick Bateman did. I'm talking about Mary Harron's American Psycho. If you guys are ready to go, shall we get it going?
Sure.
Play the thing.
I don't know why not. So we're coming up on 25 years of American Psycho, if you can believe it or not, at least the film. The film is based on the book by Bret Easton Ellis, which I believe has a copyright of, I don't know when, probably sometime in the 90s, 1991.
Yeah.
So it's been quite a while, more than 30, going up 34 years, I guess, this year. All the memes that come from this, it's spawned memes that are still used to this day with Christian Bale's expression and the various expressions that he uses throughout the film. It was released on April of 2000, April 14th of 2000, and I was telling Bill before we went on, my life was not in the greatest place at that time. And I thought that this movie was it was funny, but it was just really fucking dark. But I didn't know anything about the book. I didn't know anything about the movie.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard of it. And then a couple of years later, I ended up just reading it, and it's funny and it's disturbing and so on and so forth. Looking at it today, because I picked up a copy of it just for the sake of having it, wanted to cover it for the film. Well, I'll leave it to you guys. Let's start it off with John. What did you think? What do you think of American Psycho? 25 years old.
Well, before we even start, I have to clarify a statement you said in the very beginning of the show, Michael, saying that you told this intern or this person, 26-year-old, that we didn't have to return videos the same way that Patrick Bateman did.
John,
you didn't have to return it the way.
Okay.
I do it at least 2 or 3 times a week.
John, if I need to consult the legal
secret's
team,
safe with me, John.
I was fortunate enough that a friend of mine in the theater gave me the book and said, read this, you'll probably like it. And I read the book and loved it. The thing about the problem that I have with the movie, and it's not a major complaint, but every time I've watched it, because I saw it when it first came out, and within the 25 years, which I didn't realize it was 25 years, I've seen it about easily a dozen or 2 dozen times, just in passing, up until last week when I actually watched it again for this show. And it's amazing that I laugh hard at this movie in some of it, but I find myself not caring about this movie or about characters in this movie. And other movies where I've seen about psychopaths or devious protagonists, I usually find a way of either getting concerned or caring when they die, or like at the end of The Usual Suspects when you realize Casa Soze's getting away.
Right.
Spoiler alert in case anybody hadn't seen it.
Oh no.
But it's I was like, oh shit. I just remember seeing this going, okay. It really, and I think it's more of a statement about me, the way I viewed the culture, because I grew up in that culture.
Yeah.
Type deal, and that's always bugged me the most. So every time I watch this, there's characters in the movie I genuinely care for, but the Christian Bale character, the Patrick Bateman, who I loved as a character, but when it was over, it's kind of like, okay. And that's always surprised me.
That makes sense, because you either hate him or you love him. That seems to be the consensus. But the thing is, I was thinking about the comparison between this movie and Fight Club, which came out around the same time, and it's essentially the same concept. Someone's doing horrible things, unreliable narrator. We don't know what's true and what's not. But Tyler Durden can be a folk hero because he's for the people, and he was the poor guy fighting against the system and fighting against corporatism. Whereas Patrick Bateman, you don't want to feel for him because he's one of them. He's a yuppie. And Bret Easton Ellis wrote such a hateable character that you're right. You don't want to care for him. You don't want to identify with him. You just want to watch him and be repulsed.
Yeah, but I don't even want to hate him. That's the point. To me, he's kind of like they always say the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. I was indifferent about him.
Right.
He just reminded me of way too many people that I knew, even on that extreme level.
You're saying,
but everything else about him, his whole attitude in life, I'm like, I knew these people.
You can call it indifference, but it's actually disgust.
Yeah. It's like, either way, I just like, no, it's not even that. I just see him. I'd sit down and have a drink with him, and he'd walk away. I'd be like, all right, I don't see him for 3 years. I'm good.
Right.
I think that's the point of the movie.
Yeah.
That's the point of the movie. I haven't seen this in quite a while. And because I remember watching it, I was telling Bill before we went on, it's sort of in the way you associate a song or, something with a particular time in your life. I don't associate this with I associate this with a really horrible time in my life, like the lowest point in my life ever. So it's not, I haven't gone out of my way to watch it. Watching it now, though, my initial reaction as I was watching it, because it's been at least 10 years, I was like, wow, the script is really bad. And then it clicked in the middle of it. I'm like, oh my God, it's deliberately bad because 3/4 of the script is nothing but platitudes because everybody is so empty and so vapid and so thin that there is no substance, and that's the horror of it.
Yeah,
That's the horror of it. Like, there's just no substance to the point that there's no humanity. Like nobody remembers to the point like nobody remembers anybody's name.
Right.
And so, is Bateman killing all these people? Who knows? The point is nobody cares.
Right.
They care that they have a reservation. The guy said, I don't care. I don't care where we go. I just care that we don't have a reservation tonight. That sort of thing. It's just
that's a great scene you brought out too.
Yeah, it's just a complete take on 80s sort of excess, yuppie, self-absorption. I'm what's important. Fuck everybody else.
Yeah.
People. It's go ahead. That's.
I was thinking about this today. How all the things that are sort of adopted by the wealthy and the elites, after 20 years, it always filters down in amongst the poors. And right now, we're surrounded by people who are as self-absorbed as the uppies were in the 80s. Just look at anyone doing social media. Will step over a homeless person to take a picture of themselves, in front of the LA fires. So it's filtered down among us because every one of the obsessions that Patrick Bateman has, because he's an elite and he wants to fit in with this group, is filtered down to us. The food is a big part of it. The restaurants, and in the book they go on and 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 on about all this elitist food. But all of us now are we're obsessed with being foodies and watching Gordon Ramsay on the chef show. It's the same thing. It's just delivered to us a little bit different. We're not wearing, Gucci suits, and we're not, on Wall Street, lower Manhattan eating it, but it's filtered down to us, the clothing, the self-absorption, the fitness craze, everything that Patrick Bateman was, in 2000, but in the 80s is we're surrounded by that now.
And the anger, the aggression,
the boomers.
And it's amazing because there's like an homogeneousness about the world because everybody is the same and they're all trying to stand out. And it's all in the little differences, like the proper thickness of an ID card. And today's the same thing with selfies and conversations that are, we all want to make it look like, or a lot of people I know want to make it look like they're important.
Yeah.
I have, Michael, because you know this, because you've known me for a while, I have nieces and nephews that when I met Michael were kids and I watched them grow up into be teenagers. I just talked to my one goddaughter who I hadn't seen in a while. She's 40 years old and she's a doctor now in English literature. And she remembered something that she said to me when she was in high school. She said, do you remember when I thought that was important? And I went, that's probably the most intelligent thing you said. She goes, yeah, I just remember how that was it. And, but now I grew out of that, but I see people that are still that way now. And it's frightening to me.
Yes, that is true. Some people never get out of that high school mindset.
Oh God, yeah.
And the more money they have, it encourages them to continue to be that same douchebag that they were in high school. I just wish we could make some money from not being that.
There's no profit in it, brother.
There's no profit in artists.
There's no profit in goodness.
We talk what we talk. It's not even good.
Yeah.
There's no profit in nonconformity.
Yeah.
It's like, when they're talking, when he's getting ready to schwack Jared Leto, and I forgot how early Jared Leto gets killed in this movie. We're just like, he's gone in like the first 30 minutes. And then the rest of it is, also this sort of tension builder as to whether or not he's going to get caught. and they're playing Huey Lewis in the News, and he goes on those rants about the different types of, the different songs that they're playing, whether it's Genesis or Whitney Houston. But it starts off with Huey Lewis in the News, and I wrote this down. I wrote this down in the notes. He's talking about the pleasures of conformity,
yes,
right,
and the importance of trends,
right.
And I mean, when you really think about it, I mean, Ellis was like 35 years ahead of his time.
yes,
Because everybody is just obsessed with trends now, and not necessarily. Maybe it's shoes, maybe it's clothing, maybe it's what the latest Kardashian fashion is, this, that, or the other. But maybe it's also what's going on X. What's trending? Oh, that's trending.
Or am I trending?
Yeah,
that's the other thing. Someone turned around and said, "It's not important. It's of what you're saying. Am I trending? Am I trending now?"
Yep.
I mean, Christ. I mean, if you look at the late 80s, early 90s, I'm a huge fan of Spike Lee. Yeah. I love a lot of his movies. But when I say movies, people don't get it. I'll turn around and say, yeah, but he also did those Nike commercials where it's got to be the shoes, and I think he helped add into the fact that you had to have those Air Jordans.
Yes.
Big deal. He, added it. And he was an insightful filmmaker and still is, but he knew how to make the money.
He wasn't afraid of commercializing himself and monetizing his art. We were talking about that just a few minutes ago before we went on about the state of hip hop now as opposed to when we were kids, when it was rebellious and something to be feared. And had something to say, and now it's like a shortcut to stardom, so you could get a TV show, or you can get a movie deal.
It's a 7-Up commercial that I see almost every week when I go to the movies. It's a 7-Up commercial.
What's most frustrating is that most kids now don't know anything other than that. They just think that's how you do it. That's what rock and roll is, or that's what hip hop is this thing to make all the money.
Now, if you look at the picture, Mike, did you just show to the from the movie with all 4 of those guys?
Yeah.
It's amazing how every one of them wanted to stand out, and they look exactly alike.
Right.
I mean, even with they're all looking for that subtle thing to stand out, but not stand out too much, and it draws all the attention, but just enough that. And in this movie, as well as the book, but since we're talking about the movie, they captured that very well.
Yeah.
I mean, when they would go to the certain clubs where everybody was hanging out.
Yeah.
I went to a lot of those clubs, especially when I was hanging out with everybody I knew in New York that were in the theater. I'll get you into a real club, and they were outstandingly great, but they would walk into these things and they all would go, some of the actors would look at what they were trying to do and they would go, posers, because they, they weren't standing out. They were like trying to mimic another room.
They're all the same, but there's also this subtle competition that goes on between them.
Yeah.
With the business cards. Yep. Who's got the best business cards? This has this font, and I mean, it's just so far ahead of its time. Because now, when people are making documents at work or something, you're using this particular font to make it look better. This was right there, like way ahead of the internet. And there it was, with these guys, all throwing down the same credit card, to split. I mean, they're all, I love that scene where they have a check at the very beginning. It's $570. They haven't eaten anything in like the 1980s. So that must be like $2,000 today. Yeah. They're all just like rich at the ass, but they're all splitting it exactly 4 ways. Like nobody's treating.
Right.
Nobody's really friends. They're not really friends.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't
they're
really
not.
know anything about each other beyond the superficial, what they do when they sit in the lounge together and maybe crack the occasional joke, about this, that, or the other, doing cocaine in the bathroom.
That scene where they are confronted by those goth people or those counterculture people, and Bateman can, without skipping a beat, rattle off all of the politically correct concerns that they all should have.
Right.
And his buddy's just giggling. That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, man.
One of my favorite scenes in the movie, in comparing those type guys, was when they were in a boardroom and Bateman's character doing the narration says, yeah, he goes to the same hairstylist but I have, but my haircut's better.
Yeah.
And they were almost exactly the same. My haircut's a little better because I got a little, and I'm going, dude, you fucking look the same.
Yeah.
You know?
That's like the business card scene to a T. They're all like such subtle differences. Although someone pointed out to me that actually, when you look at Bateman's, it's like a Dutch angle. The text is actually slightly skewed, which is hilarious. I never noticed that.
Yeah, there's a lot of little innuendo things or little touches they put in there to make it stand out. But my all-time favorite was one person said, we went to the same printer and got the same cards.
Mm-hmm.
It was just different shades of white.
And then the one guy who has a little bit of difference, the guy who wears the bow tie and has a different coat and a different haircut, he's obviously the gay guy, and he whips out his card and it's all gold lame, and it's just like it's.
And the thing is, they all hate him because
they all hate him.
They're all going.
How they would giggle when he wanted to kill him with the look on his face when he saw that card. He's just like, "I'm going to kill this motherfucker right now."
And I love the fact that all the guys that looked the same were pissed off because he looked different.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I was just like, damn.
Bret Easton Ellis and the director of this movie put a bead right on the 80s and on that whole culture and just fucking pulled the trigger. It was so good.
Yeah.
You know, when he's doing this was my first exposure. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago because the last time we were here, we were talking about Scott Cooper's Hostiles, 17 years after this. So we were just talking about Christian Bale, and Bill and I don't know if you remember this. We were saying that American Psycho was my first introduction to him as an adult. I had never seen him before because before he had done that Spielberg movie, Empire of the Sun, but he was a kid. So I didn't make the association that this was that same kid from like 11 years ago. But he's just so good.
Yeah.
He's good at just being Bateman, like this flat sort of thing. When he's talking about how, I work out, with a vigorous exercise. And then he starts to talk about all the moisturizer he puts on his face, and then he pulls that mask back and he goes, I am, I am not there.
Yeah.
It's just a void.
And that is
nothing. And I remember the first time I saw that, I'm like, holy shit, that's frightening. Like, this is like that moment, even though this is a comedy, is more frightening than anything I saw in like Seven.
Yeah.
It's just one line. He's not doing anything. He's just pulling some skin moisturizer off his face. It's kind of weird.
And
but
he's not even, and what to me makes that scene works, besides pulling off, when you reveal the face, there's no emotion.
No.
He's not smiling. He's not smirk. It's just plain.
Yeah.
And I love that because I went, okay, as a performer, he's like, I'm not letting you see anything. This was exactly what the character was. I'm not letting you see a thing.
Yeah, and he's pulling off that mask that he wears every day to get by in this world of high finance.
Yeah,
I have to admit though, back in the 90s, somebody gave me one of those ice pack face mask things when I looked a little puppy, and they work.
Okay.
I had to admit that. I was like, shit.
You used to wear it when you were doing your crunches? You can do 1,000.
My crunches was me reaching into a bowl of chips. That's
reaching for a Marlboro Light, and hey, crunch over and grab a lighter.
That was a Camel Light. I was smoking a Turkish blend. But no, it's there's certain things in this movie that just freaking work.
But I mean, like I saw back then that Bale was something special, And like I was saying, when I heard 8 years later or 6 years later that was the guy who was going to play Bruce Wayne, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And I remember with the first 5 minutes of Batman Begins, where he's having that one-on-one with Liam Neeson in the prison. I'm like, wow, this is fucking different.
Dude, if you ever get a chance, I'm talking about Christian Bale, from Empire of the Sun, the Spielberg movie, He did a couple of films in between. Newsies was okay. If you get a chance to see Kenneth Branagh as Henry V,
I have it.
He's in that movie.
Is he really?
That's what?
Christian Bale's, he's one of the boys that actually gets killed for carrying the flag. Okay. Christian Bale is in that movie. He's like 15, 17 years old. And he's in the speech where he's doing the Christmas Day speech. He has no lines, and he's in almost every scene. And he was at the end, I can never remember the actor's name, but he was the same actor that was in The Fifth Element. Was crying over when they do the song and they're carrying the bodies across the field. Christian Bale's the one that Kenneth Branagh picks up and carries because he was the boy that was the flag bearer and things like that. Bale was funny. He took me years later and went, "Holy shit, that's Christian Bale!" You know.
Yeah, I remember him first from that movie Swing Kids, if you remember that one.
Yeah, Swing Kids. I said Newsies. Sorry.
It's about the Newsies he was in too, but Swing Kids where Christian Bale played a Nazi. And I thought that was a good performance as well.
He was showing chops when he was for such a long time. And anytime I see him in a film, I'm like, even if I don't like the film, I'm like, yeah, but I usually wind up liking him.
I will, if Bale is in it, there's a better than average chance I'm going to see it.
Right.
Because he usually doesn't sign up for crap. He usually wants to do something where he's trying to give a solid performance with a serious script. And this script is just so good. And the fact that there's nothing in it is what somehow they still make that fucking work. And I think, it's an easy thing to miss. If you don't know, to look for that.
You gotta read the book in order to appreciate how good the movie is, I think, because Bret Easton Ellis went overboard with descriptions, especially of clothing, and he perfectly mapped out Bateman's mind. But when you're reading it, it's like it's just hell. It's like, I'm in the middle of this guy's hellish mind. They took just the best highlights out of the book and turned it into the movie, and I think that was just a brilliant way to do it, where they didn't try to redo the entire book, but it's like a highlight reel of all the funniest stuff.
I just saw before I tried to come on the first time and got screwed up. There was an interview with an old Charlie Rose interview with the director and the writer of the book, and the writer turned around and said, "I don't think it ever should have been put into a movie." And they asked why, and he goes, "Because now people are going to have an opinion on that, and if you read the book, there's so much more options."
Yeah,
type deal. And he goes, and he said to the director, "It's nothing against it because you did a brilliant job, but it's." They'll just focus on that now instead of all the other things that were opened up.
I think this is one of those films that can never be remade because the time when it's released is perfect in its relationship to the 80s and the people that saw it in 2000.
Yeah,
it's like we were talking about Eric. He's like, I really didn't like it. I'm like, you didn't grow up in the 80s.
Right, right. Exactly.
Like, we Gen Xers,
like people.
Yeah, we lived through this, and we're like, I didn't relate to Ronald Reagan either.
Yeah,
there was it wasn't. I didn't.
It's Alex Keaton, but an evil Alex Keaton, which I like.
Yeah.
We grew up hating Alex Keaton for some reason.
I grew up. I mean, during this time, like the early mid '90s and 2000s when this came out. Working in Cape May in the theater, all the yuppies from New York or Washington or Baltimore were coming to Cape May, either vacationing and saying, "Oh, look at this artsy little town," or worse, they were buying homes and turning them into bed and breakfasts.
Oh yeah,
well, I got to deal with them all the time, and it was amazing when you hear them go, "I can't believe I acted like that," because they got out of that situation.
Same thing's happening here in Asbury Park. This arty little ghetto town on the ocean has turned into a yuppie haven, and it sucks because all these people are moving in and destroying all the things that made people want to go to the town in the first place. So
my nephew
living in these $1 million condos and going to eat fancy food.
Yeah, my one nephew's a musician and plays in the Philadelphia area and what have you. And him and his wife, he goes, we went to Asbury Park all the time because it was. But then he goes. Now we're noticing going. I don't think we're going to be going again because it has changed.
Yeah.
To him. And I blame Bruce Springsteen. But other than that, God damn it, he made it famous. How dare he?
You know something though? I mean, there are two performances that I thought stood out.
Yes.
And it was because they were in contrast to what everybody else was doing. And the first person I thought was Samantha Mathis as that girl on the side that he's sleeping with.
Yeah.
And she's just suffering.
Oh God, yeah.
She's just suffering and suffering because she wants, like, she's like doped out of her mind on Xanax all the time to numb the fact that she's surrounded in this life by nothing. You know, she's just kind of drowning in all this superficiality, and she's not getting anything she wants in life. But she's in the car with Bateman, and it's the only time once or twice, there's another character in here where you hear someone being honest, and she's like, I just want to have a child.
Right.
You know, I just want to have two perfect, and then she just cuts off because Bateman like goes on rambling about something again.
Right.
There's a scene where she's with Bateman and she goes, if I don't see you at Easter.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I remember the first time I saw it in the movie, I'm like, oh my God, she's going to kill herself.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking that, and I'm going, and it was funny because I actually cared for her character.
Yeah.
You know, I was concerned about her going, oh shit, because you could see that she was lost.
It was she was one of the two people in here that actually showed some self-awareness.
Right. Right.
Even though she was
coming it out.
Yeah.
Whereas Reese Witherspoon's character, to contrast, she, Bateman says the most heinous shit to her. She's just like brushing it off, like, yeah, whatever, we'll get married.
Okay, we'll do it this way then.
Just tell me what you want for Christmas, and don't say breast implants, all right? Because I'm not. Don't say breast implants again. You know, it's just the other person. Aside from Samantha Mathis, was Chloe Sevigny.
Yeah,
who was his assistant.
Mm-hmm.
She was the only normal person I thought in the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting. Why doesn't he kill her?
Don't know.
I honestly think because I resaw this clip again today. Bateman always kept wanting to stand out. And when that phone call came in about the girl saying, hey, Paul, you bad boy, and everything else, she reacted to it, and he didn't. And I think he became very aware. He always wanted to stand out, and he realized she does stand out, you know, in her normalcy, for lack of a better term. That's why he said, I think you should go, or I'm going to do bad things to you.
Yeah.
And I went, wow, I think that was his the only time he was real.
Moment of clarity.
And he said, I would, you know, because she could easily take, I'll do bad things to you in any way.
Yeah.
He knew he would kill her. And he's like, you need to get out. Yeah. You know, to me, that was when he was real.
That was the one moment where he seemed to have aweress.
Yeah.
You know, like emotion, like he had an emotion, like it's almost like trepidation, like, no, let's not do this. You're gonna, because he had that nail gun right to her head.
Oh yeah,
you know,
there's a
right to her head.
Now, how far down the rabbit hole is he at that point where you start to get the idea that he's exaggerating things,
right?
Because at some point in the movie, you go from this is plausible to fuck, he's really like, this is not real. Like, how far down the rabbit hole does he go when he has that moment?
So you're thinking that there is exaggeration, or do you think I was under that? Like, I can buy that.
I always took it as he possibly killed a few people. I felt that he definitely killed the homeless guy, broke the dog's legs because they're disposable, but he didn't kill his coworkers.
Jared Leto.
He didn't kill those cops. You know, he didn't do all the other things.
See, I'm busted. I'm not going to go that far. I think he did kill the Jared Leto character. The cops and everything else is that his fantasies just ran amok.
So when he goes back to his apartment and when he goes back to the apartment and the realtor is there and she's like, "Don't make trouble." Do you really think that she's that desperate to
hell yes.
that she cleaned up this body and dumped it and didn't report it?
I was in a discussion with a bunch of people when they were talking about that scene, and there's a friend of mine who's a real estate agent in New York, and she said, absolutely they would do that. And her warning was, don't come back here, because she probably knows where the fucking bodies are buried. He said, I'll dime you out.
Okay, that's fair.
Now, it's funny because I also thought it was a state on the fact of how the whole rental scene in New York is incredibly competitive and everything else. So, and I laughed out loud at that scene, but she's dating a friend of mine who's an actor who's also a lawyer, and he turned around and went, "Oh yeah," and he goes, we watched that and she goes, "I know people like that."
Oh, shit.
He would do that in a heartbeat.
It is in keeping with what we saw in the rest of the film.
Oh yeah,
everybody's so just disconnected. That okay, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But if you told me that he did all that, I probably wouldn't have any.
I think like when he was doing the gunfight with the police, and all of a sudden was a sharpshooter. I'm like, yeah, I think he delved into the fantasy. But when they said, "Oh, he didn't kill the Jared Leto character," I said, I know, I'm betting he did.
Yeah,
because he needed to feel.
I mean, there is a point where you don't know where he stops killing and where the self-aggrandization happens.
Exactly.
Like, I know it's possible because of that old story about how all those people in the apartments in New York watched a woman get raped and murdered and never called the cops. There's that incident. So, when he's chasing this girl through the hallway naked with a chainsaw and drops it on her down the stairs and no one says anything and it's like nothing ever happened. Okay, maybe that could happen. But maybe that was an exaggeration, but we don't know. That's the good ambiguity.
And that's why I think what makes the movie work at times, because you get to there's too many people who say some of these scenes are definitive. And I'm going, no, that's what I kind of like about the fact that the lines are blurred.
That's the thing about this movie.
I didn't understand when I first saw it. Like, I left the theater going, what the fuck did I just watch? And it took me repeated watchings to understand what they were trying to do, because I was looking for the plot and looking for something to make sense. And the more outrageous it got, I was just like, I don't get what they're saying here.
The problem is, and it's not really a problem, but I mean, in this sense, is that no one is reliable.
Right.
Like there's no bedrock here.
Right.
There's no bedrock anywhere in the storyline really, except for Chloe Svengme.
Yeah, I was about to say.
At the end of the movie, she discovers his picture book, where he's been, drawing all those fantasies, or maybe not fantasies, about just dismembering women.
What about the cop?
Are we talking about Willem Dafoe?
Yeah. Do you think he was really trying to figure out this murder, or do you think he was going through the paces and not trying to make waves among the rich and powerful elites?
I think that everybody in there is unreliable because, again, you're hearing that Jared Leto isn't dead. He's in London. This person, everybody is so mixed up and jumbled that there is no firm bedrock.
Yeah.
It'd be impossible, I think, to draw a logical narrative. Like, it wouldn't fit in the story.
Right.
A logical narrative wouldn't fit in this. Like, it shouldn't. It's because it would undo, I think, a large point of what Ellis was trying to do.
And it didn't fit in her narrative in the story within the story, because you were mentioning, Michael, about the secretary. There's a scene, I think it was Jared Leto and Christian Bale, when they went to eat dinner, and the waiter comes up to them, and they were just rambling off the drinks, and he turns around and goes, "Do you want to hear the specials?" And he gave a look that's just like, "Can I do my fucking job?" And it was funny because all of a sudden they jumped on his ass because, you're destroying our reality right now by bringing reality into it. I loved that. And it was a little scene, and I sat there and said, that's a great moment in this movie, because They were pissed. How dare you talk to me that way? Because all you.
That's what he said. He's like, "Do you want to hear the specials?" He's like, "Not if you want to keep your spleen." Like, get out.
It was like what the fuck?
Okay, so I mean, we get to the end. I mean, in the last line in the movie is that this confession has meant nothing.
Right.
There's no resolution. There's no punishment. There's no reconciliation. There's no redemption for anybody. It just goes on.
Yeah.
Right.
It just goes on and on and on. He gets away with whatever he's done or hasn't done. He's gotten away with everything.
Right.
It's the ultimate purposelessness. He's so empty, and nothing that he fills his life with fills it up, even to the point of murder, and even being, confessing to these murders. No one gives a shit because he's not making an impact on anyone else.
No, he's descended into cannibalism, according to him.
Yeah.
In the book, that's actually part of the book. Yeah, that's part of the story in the book.
We do see the woman's head in his refrigerator.
Yeah, and he tries to. It's funny because he does try to confess.
Right.
And there's nobody to confess to.
But he's not getting a reaction for all these murders. He's might as well try to get a reaction for the confession, and everyone's like,
they don't believe him.
Couldn't do that.
They don't even believe him that you're not that important.
Yes,
they don't even believe that he's his own lawyer didn't believe that he was Patrick Bateman. It's very Kafka-esque. It's so absurdist. It's so absurdist.
On one of the review things I was doing for this, they noticed the fact because the director put a couple of points in it that you always saw sometimes Christian Bale's character buy an exit. She said they were pointing out the fact of Satra's no exit. That they were kind of dropped that in, that these were the characters that were kind of locked in their own hell. And if they went out, they would find out where, but they never leave.
Right.
They stay still within that world.
That's interesting.
And he does. I remember seeing a question where they turned around and said, what do you think would happen to him a year later if they extended the book? Would he get caught? And my favorite was some guy said, no, he'd probably go to Colombia and grow marijuana. I
thought it was a loop. Like at the end, when he tries to confess, you'd think he would go back home and take a shower, and it goes back to the beginning, where I'm Patrick Bateman and I'm nothing, and he's taking a shower and cleaning up from doing all this shit.
Well, it was funny that you said that because the one person I was talking about, he said he's the gerbil on the treadmill.
There you go. Yeah.
He's just going back, and it just happens to be a psychotic treadmill, or wheel. But it's always just going to go back and keep doing it.
I always thought the funny thing about Sartre's No Exit is that at one point towards almost at the end of the book, at the end of the play, the door to hell actually opens and everyone's too afraid to leave.
Right.
And so it only opens for a short window. And like you can leave hell because it's existentialist. You're making all the decisions. You can leave, but everybody's too freaked out to leave. And so the door just closes. Like you had your chance. No, and then the door just closes again, and then they're actually relieved. They're actually relieved that they don't have to take any action. Oh God, it's been decided for us. Okay, we're just going to be in here for all eternity, no problem.
Yeah,
as long as I don't have to.
It's comfortable to be in a familiar hell than to go out.
Take a chance.
And he would be that way.
All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry. My apologies.
No, go right ahead.
No, I was saying, I was thinking, maybe we could start to wrap this one up, maybe. Unless, is there anything? Are there any particular points that we have not addressed that anyone would like to get into?
I think that to me, the one point over the fact is that because we kind of touched on it a little bit. I loved William Dafoe in this movie.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know about this until today. I saw, again, another thing. William Dafoe shot all of his scenes 3 times. And with the intention of,
that's right.
According to the director, they said with the intention of, 1, he saw Bateman as the suspect, 2, he saw Bateman as actually being guilty. And 3, he had no clue who was behind it.
Right.
And all she did was all she did was interspace that and cut them in, so it was a different time that you saw it. And she goes, I kept him ambiguous because I wanted to have people think, was he really on the case or not? And I love that because she said that William Dafoe didn't do any physical actions. He did it all physically the same way. He just changed his voice inflection.
Oh.
And it was just like that. And he goes, and I went, and because I went back and saw some of the clips, I'm like, yeah, you're right. Because it's, he's still sitting in the same positions and everything. It's all just the way how he said the line type deal. And I thought that was, to me, once again, proving William Dafoe is one of the greatest American actors ever. But, type deal. That, and I love the music. I mean, we all talk about Huey Lewis and all, but the music throughout the whole movie. And I'm sorry, Hip to Be Square, that whole dance. Why didn't win Best Choreography at MTV Music Awards? I'll never know.
I loved that girl's making fun of him for owning Whitney Houston CD. She's
like, God, yeah. And the look he gives her, and I'm like, oh, you dumb woman.
That's another thing too. Actually, because Bale's expressiveness, like his facial reactions to a lot of different things, it was really good.
Mm-hmm.
Even he's gone on to stellar things, and I didn't see it for a really long time after this, and then made the connection that he was going to be Batman. 5-6 years later, I'm like, holy shit, that's got to be something, and I was right.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are today, 25 years later, still talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's get to the part in the stream where we rate the film. This channel has a rating system that goes from 0 to 5 up by halves. So 0, 0.5, 1, 1.5, all the way to 5. So 0, for example, would be I'd rather find a clump of fingernails in my food than watch this movie again, all the way to 5, which is this is the journey, this is the destination, this is why I watch films in the first place. Bill Halberstram, what would you give Mary Harron's American Psycho?
I'm gonna give it 100 a 5. That is just one hell of a movie. It came out at a time when there were just every time I would go to the theater, there's one great movie after another in that late '99, early 2000, and it is head and shoulders above. It's like in the top 5 of that era of films for me, along with Matrix and The Election and American Beauty and all those movies we still talk about today. 5, brother, 5.
More than 4 and less than 6. That's a 5. All right, John K. Alvarez back from returning some videotapes. What do you got for us, man?
I'm going to give it a 5 too. I was debating this the whole time. Like I said, I questioned about the not being concerned about the character, but every time I watch this movie, I wind up thinking about it a lot.
Yeah.
And I figured that's also part of the destination. If it's making me question it each time that I watch it, it's engaging me on a level that I just might not recognize. I think Christian Bale's portrayal of Bateman is right up there with Tony Perkins in Psycho type deal. The way he presents, and I'll even put him up with what's his name? Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
Only because of there's too many people that play psychotic characters or this evil type characters, and they're very over the top and they're very wild in this, and he is a shark in a pond of fish, and that's what kept running through my head when I watched it the last time. Was that everybody keeps talking about being a big fish in a little pond. Well, he's in a decent pond, but he's a big-ass shark, and it's just the way he moves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's silent in this, and I love that.
And nobody knows it. They all think he's a dork.
Right.
Exactly.
Like all the feedback you get from him that he gets to his face about him because they don't even know who he is that he's a dork.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this guy's like the fucking devil. Like,
Yeah.
He makes you believe he's not really there, It's like, holy shit.
And there's always, and the way they portray it sometimes in movies, there's always like a little telltale thing or, he just played it so well. And even though when you knew he was, when he's talking with the homeless guy and trying to genuinely be concerned, and then he said, "But you smell like piss," and it just comes out of, and he eventually just kills him.
He does that
like the dog. To me, that's just. I mean, it's wonderful acting, even on a dark scale. So I'm giving it a 5.
He does it to Chloe Sevigny too on several occasions.
Oh, yeah.
He says something, and then he'll flip it before she walks out the door into an insult, but change that outfit. You know, like he can't just be a human being. He has to. He can't do it. He can't do it. For me, I'm going with 5. I don't. The idea that, like I said before, I couldn't figure out what was falling flat with me about this script. I'm like, and then I discovered like 2/3, 3/4 of it is just platitude.
Right.
Just platitude after platitude after. There's no depth to any of this, and yet somehow it almost seems bottomless.
Right.
You know, that's I don't know how they did it. That's so hard to do. I mean, granted, you've got a stellar cast. Even the supporting people, you know, the 2 hookers, you know, like everybody's like really good at it. Especially the one hooker, the one from the street. I'm
calling you Christy.
Just fantastic performances. And
watch.
Huh?
Don't touch the watch.
Yeah, don't touch the watch.
Don't touch the watch.
Probably, I mean, I'm just saying this as a quick aside. My favorite serial killer movie actually is Fincher's Zodiac.
There you go, yeah.
Because you never see him.
Right.
They never caught the Zodiac. And there's that idea that they may have had, some idea who he was, and they narrow it down at the end. My favorite one is, but this is probably top 3, top 4 in that specific genre. I'd put it over 7. Maybe over Hopkins and Silence of the Lambs. It's good. It's good. He's just empty. And there's no overacting.
No, actually, and it could have been.
Right. That's the whole thing. The performance is just one platitude after, like Bill said, when they're having dinner. We need to cool it on the anti-Semitic remarks, and work out for climate change, and then we've got to do this, and racial equality, and then we've got to, and you're just like, what the fuck is this? Brilliant.
There's a friend of mine who's a playwright. He wrote a play one time called "The Conversations and Cliches," and that's all they were saying were all these standard cliche lines, but it was supposed to put weight on it by what they weren't saying, type deal. And he said that was an example after he read the book, because that's what he felt, that it was just, the same thing.
All right, Bill, plug something, anything going on?
Man, I got nothing, but I'll say this. My kids got something. I'm a teacher, and I teach radio and audio technology. So tune in to my high school's radio station, WCHS. We are on Live 365. We are on iHeartRadio. We are on the TuneIn app. And we are soon to be on the Odyssey app. So plenty of places to check us out. Communications High School, WCHS.
Do me a favor. DM me or text me the links, and I'll put them in the description.
Nice.
I'll add it as a regular thing. All right, John, anything going on?
I want to actually do a little retro of what I did 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And I did that play reading thing.
Sure.
Only because you can now, which we weren't able to do before for a couple of years, people can go on and still see it. It used to be if you were going to watch it on Zoom, you had to catch it live. But now we have it set up that people can actually buy it like you're buying a ticket and show it, as long as it's not 17 people, because according to FCC regulations, after that, you have to sell popcorn. But, and the thing about it was, the guy who runs this little theater in Summers Point, he told us that when he put the open up about doing this New Works Theater, He said within 30 minutes he had to shut it down because he already had 350 applications and had to deal with about 12 different phone calls from agents. Basically, this little thing he started about 8 years ago is now getting a lot of attention.
Nice.
And the performers that I got to work with were a lot of these young women that were from the New York area. And it was funny because there's people who had watched it from the very beginning who turned around and said, "This is outstanding," because he put a plea out saying, "Don't make it too normal. I want to try to do something different and strength wise." So if anybody wants to watch the previous shows, so they can go see once again the world of the American Werewolf with Michael Lipford, we can turn around and Mike has all the info there, and on that little billboard clip, it actually has where you can get right down there in red where you can pick it up. I was actually very happy for the guy because he's a local who graduated from Wildwood High School. And as he said, he went to Carnegie Mellon and to get a master's degree in script writing. He's been doing this stuff like out in California for decades. And so to hear him turn around and say, we actually had to shut it down because we couldn't handle all the calls.
Nice.
I'm like, I was so happy for him because I remember the first year he was begging for people to give him something, and now he's at that level. So it's nice to hear that in this world where you don't get a lot of attention unless you're like a celebrity, it's nice to actually see that somebody's doing the right thing.
Well, they say being an overnight success only takes 10 to 15 years. So
yes,
there you go.
There you go.
All right, for this channel, let's see what is going on. I put out on Saturday my spoiler-free review, and you'll find this at at the American Werewolf YouTube channel of Oz Perkins the Monkey, which I thought was just a really, really good horror comedy. I was telling Bill before we went on, horror comedies usually tend to be neither funny or horrific. This was actually both. So go check that out. The weekend projections I put out for this week past Captain America still at #1. I'm going to be doing a weekly video on box office numbers because I go to the movies pretty fucking often. So I might as well keep up on that. We got some WWE content coming out there because apparently fans are showing up to the female wrestlers' homes now. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong? It's just like one of those, what the fuck is wrong with people kind of, and so like the ladies are like, look, it's never okay to send me something to my house. It's never okay to deliver it in person. Jesus Christ. Like, what does it take with some people?
There's a lot wrong with people.
They're
my least favorite thing.
Mike, you'll get a kick out of this because you remember Dusty Rhodes.
Sure.
There's a guy down here that was a bartender at a dinner theater I worked in Cape May called Elaine's.
Okay.
The first couple of years, old-fashioned bartender, bow tie, striped shirt, the little garter belt or the garter thing on his sleeve.
Yeah.
He used to bartend in Florida, and Dusty Rhodes would come in all the time and get a meal and have a drink. He talked to him a lot, and he said because he asked me, he goes, "Do you know Dusty Rhodes?" I said, "Is the sky blue?" Yeah, I know who he was. And this was like 1990, so he was still in WWE. And he turned around and said, there was a guy who was very drunk, and he said, Dusty, to give credit where credit's due, if anybody saw him and they were drunk, they always wanted to have a fight with him.
Of course.
And they did. They were walking up, or wrestling was fake or whatever.
Of course.
And George, who was the bartender, said, and Dusty was actually very cool. He said, look, I'm just going to slip out. George would grab his stuff and stick it in like a to-go box. So he goes, one guy kept following him. And he goes, Dusty Rhodes walked out, and a guy followed him. He goes, and he goes, George said, he moved so fast, I couldn't get out of the bar fast enough. He was outside. I come down the steps. All of a sudden, the guy's on the ground, knocked out, and Dusty Rhodes looking over and goes, oh, damn idiot, he tripped. Fell right into my elbow and walked away. It was like, bam.
Dusty Rhodes was an old school man who weighed about 300 pounds, who was like used to getting slammed by like some fucking hick in a bar.
Andre the Giant picking him up and throwing him.
Yeah. Okay, so that reminds me also this weekend coming up, WWE Elimination Chamber is coming up, and I'm going to be doing a post-mortem on that the day after. So this coming Sunday with Barrington Martin III, who I had on to interview and talk about like life. And next thing you know, we're talking about WWE. Also, next Friday, I'm going to my first WWE SmackDown. SmackDown is coming to Philadelphia, so that's going to be fun. I got that coming up. That's going to be a good time. I have to figure out what movie we're doing for next week, and I should have that knocked out within a day or so. So I'll be.
You got it.
My thanks to Bill Halberstam, and my thanks to John K. Alvarez, back from returning videotapes. This movie is not streaming anywhere. I think you have to find it and watch it. It's rarely streaming anywhere. You kind of have to figure it out and get it on your own. But it's worth. It
is on Netflix.
Is it?
I caught it on Netflix about a week ago.
Okay. Well, You heard it here first. All right. My thanks to everyone. We'll see you in the next video. God bless you, everybody. Have a good
night.
Hey, everybody. This is the American Werewolf. Thanks for stopping by. Like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification button. Thank you.